Officially, hello everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to today's webinar, Creating a Dynamic Workforce, Outsourcing versus Insourcing. Should be a great conversation. I'm Joel Anderson, VP of Marketing here at Tier4 Advisors. I'm looking forward to today's session. It's hosted by Sherrill, the founder and chairman of Tier4, along with our expert panel who we'll introduce in just a moment. First, today's webinar will be recorded and made available for replay after this session, along with the contact information of our panelists. And second, we'd love to hear from you during today's webinar. If you have questions for our panel, please use the Q&A feature down at the bottom of your screen. We'd love to be able to answer those questions for you and hopefully be able to do so before the end of the webinar. So with that said, Jake, I will turn the time over to you and the rest of our panel.
Thanks, Joel, and thanks for all those who are attending around the country. We appreciate you joining this webinar. We're excited to talk to you about the subject today. Before we get started, I wanted to let all of our panelists introduce themselves. So we're going to go ahead and start with Patrick from OnePath. Patrick, go ahead and introduce yourself to all of our attendees, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Jake, and good afternoon to everyone. Thanks for giving us a few minutes of your time this afternoon just to share in our conversation. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of OnePath. We are an IT managed service provider that focuses in vertical markets that require compliant solutions. So think primarily healthcare, financial services, any kind of manufacturing where payment card certifications, SOC, HIPAA requirements are a key component of the business, and that compliance is part of your everyday thought process. We merge that with capabilities for workplace technology coming from a long history of building technologies capabilities both in major league ballparks to office parks, being able to provide those types of enterprise level technology solutions to businesses ranging from SMBs all the way up to the enterprise. And I have the pleasure of leading our team that assembles those products together into bundles. So it's a lot of fun to be on the forefront of that technology curve every day.
Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate it. And Betsy, my partner at Tier4 Group. Betsy, introduce yourself to the group.
Thanks, Jake. Betsy Robinson here, President, Founder, and CEO of Tier4 Group. If the name sounds familiar, we are the sister company to Tier4 Advisors. And we have three distinct divisions under our umbrella. So the first is we were founded, our bread and butter is as a talent company. So helping SMBs, mid-markets, and enterprises hire top talent, whether that be contract labor, contract to hire, or full-time employees. And then the other areas that we can support are around professional services, so deliverables-based technology projects, and cybersecurity consulting as well under our umbrella. So we're proud to be headquartered right here in Atlanta, women-owned company, and excited to be here. And this subject is certainly near and dear to our heart.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Andrew Delia, one of our partners from the Northeast. Andrew, introduce yourself and your team to the attendees, please.
Wow, I didn't know North Carolina was the Northeast, bud. But thanks. I'm Andrew Delia. I am the Director of Managed Services for BCMOne. BCMOne is a managed solutions provider tackling everything from WAN acquisition, MPLS, internet, 3G, 4G, managing that throughout the whole installation process, and then also day two support. We also are a Microsoft Gold partner and, of course, a Cisco shop as well. So thanks for having us, and thank you for the time.
Thanks so much. And Andrew, by the way, the headquarters is in New York.
Yes, I know. I was just busting chops.
Hey, Josh with Greenhouse Data. Thanks for jumping on. Josh, go ahead and introduce yourself and Greenhouse, please.
Yeah, thanks, Jake, and hey, everyone. My name is Josh Larsen. I am the Director of Product Development at Greenhouse Data. We are a consulting and managed services provider. It's been around since about 2007. We're headquartered in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and we focus on helping customers advance their digital transformation goals. Usually that's by building hybrid cloud solutions, by migrating to the cloud, modernizing business applications, and applying DevOps practices. So we aim to help take a customer all the way through their IT journey, no matter which point they're at right now or how far along they want to go. We specialize in VMware and Microsoft solutions primarily. We're a VMware Premier partner. We're also a Microsoft Azure Expert MSP.
Excellent, Josh. Thanks a lot. And again, my name is Jake Sherrill. I'm the founder and chairman of Tier4 Advisors. I founded Tier4 Advisors to help simplify and expedite the procurement of data center projects. And over the last 7.5 years, we've continued to progress and change as most companies do. So not only do we help with data center, but also anything in the data center environment like cloud and DRaaS and things like that, as well as telecom, managed services, security, and emerging tech. So end users have an opportunity to go out and do projects on their own, or they engage somebody like Tier4 who's done over 1,000 projects in those key categories that I just mentioned. And you can leverage our expertise and the database of vendors, most of who all are on this call today. So we'll go ahead and jump right in. Today's title, this is the 14th webinar we've done since this pandemic started. And we are excited about today's topic with regards to creating a dynamic workforce, outsourcing versus insourcing. So with that said, Betsy, we're going to go ahead and start with you, and then Patrick, please chime in. Open dialogue. We also encourage all of our attendees, if you have questions or comments, please go ahead and share that using the chat feature below. So the first question is, what is a dynamic workforce, and how does that apply to the technology department and IT strategy right now? And then also, how does it play into the digital transformation of what IT end users are being faced with, which is, again, transform for the betterment of the organization, or candidly, the organization might find someone else to do that. So Betsy, we'll start with you on that one.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. So dynamic workforce, or we oftentimes hear gig workforce in our gig economy, and it's really a catch-all phrase for anything outside of the traditional workforce model, right? We're seeing a big shift from hiring full-time employees to looking at independent consultants or outsourcing, or freelancers, contingent workers, even crowdsourcing, right, is taken on a big part of our lives. So it's a more dynamic ecosystem from which you can find talent from multiple sources, and it's really why you're on the talent piece of our business. Talent strategy is becoming a competitive differentiator, and oftentimes kind of the lifeblood of an organization. So it's embracing flexibility and freedom and casting that widest net, right, for where to find and engage the best and brightest, and thinking outside the model that has to be, from inception of graduating from school, high school or college, and getting that gold watch when you retire. It's a totally different mindset, right, than what we've all been used to, or what our parents' generations were used to. So the technology department, I would say was one of the first, and now you're seeing, especially with the pandemic, you're seeing a lot of other departments, right, having to think outside the box. But you saw things with companies going overseas for talent, or hiring contractors, or utilizing technology. And how that plays into digital transformation is that technology is going to drive and enable and engage the dynamic workforce, and drive a company's competitive advantage around that. So it really works for both sides of the equation right now, both candidates and the talent, as well as the companies, to kind of pop in and out where they can best utilize their expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. Patrick, what else do you have to chime in on that point?
I love that term, gig economy, that you use, Betsy. You talk about technology enabling this further. Yeah, I think if we think about what the new normal, at least in the short term, has done, it has taught us all that interactions like this can be just as productive as face-to-face interactions. It opens up the opportunity for us to leverage, whether it be contractors or outsourced providers that are all around North America and all around the globe, whereas we would have thought back in February that it's still important to travel folks on site, to spend that money on travel, to have them in our office. I think we've learned to operate with folks across time zones and across international boundaries in ways that we never had before. And frankly, I think that makes it easier to get over some of those hurdles that used to exist in the past. And in the technology space, if you think about whether it's particular specialization in a certain area of software development, or annual audit needs that require a very specialized skill set for a short period of time, that need is only going to deepen as cybersecurity complexities continue to increase. As the hackers get smarter, we have to get smarter. You need someone with a deeper skill set, but you don't need them for all 223 workdays. You need them for a short period of time dedicated to your business. And what better way to do that than to build that dynamic network of contractors and partners that you can depend on.
100%. You're spot on there. And moving on, Andrew, we'll come to you for the next one. What are some unique, kind of technology needs of dynamic workforce? Talking about VDI, collaboration, security, compliance. Obviously, we've seen it happen through this pandemic. We are all given, a matter of days or maybe a week or two notice in the sense of basically mobilizing and enabling our fellow coworkers. But, what are some of the unique needs that you've seen, and what can we talk about with regards to that?
Besides, noise canceling headsets, right? Because we all have loud stuff going on in the backgrounds and figuring out how to work in a different environment. Look, I think all of the technologies that have been in play, even pre-COVID or any kind of pandemic that could happen in the future, are all at play. Because they're all important things. You mentioned VDI, of course, right? We want to how do we make our workforce easier to manage, no matter where they are, whether they're in an office space that you own or even at home. Having VDI, very simple, right? We can manage profile groups, put a user and integrate it with Active Directory, and voila, right? Anywhere, no matter where they are in the world, they log in. It's their same desktop. All their files and things are all in one spot. It makes a nice, one thing we also we can't lose focus on, the user experience at the end of the day, right? If we make it easy for our employees to work in these anywhere, right? To be honest, they're going to be more productive for us. And VDI definitely gets us one step closer to that kind of unified, hey, I log on from an iPad or whether it's a Android device. It's the same experience overall. So VDI, voice, and UCaaS, I think that might be the single most important thing, as we're all seeing now, because we are using all these different technologies that are out there: Zoom, Skype, Teams, etc. Is there going to be that one unified collaboration that I don't have to install 15 different applications on my desktop to hey, I'm dealing with this partner, I need to use WebEx. I'm dealing with this partner, it's Ring Central, whatever the case might be, right? Finding that nice, easy, collaboration tool that will work across the board, I think is going to be important. Remote access, right? How do we secure our borders a little bit tighter now? We no longer have an organization that has 10 locations. We now have organizations that have thousands of locations because everybody's remote. Everybody's house has now become an office. We need to protect that. How do we do that, right? So how do we make secure connectivity a part of that? And, of course, cloud, right? How can we leave out cloud there? Look, DevOps is still happening, right? Companies are still trying to build new applications and figure out ways to make their business more profitable. So DevOps plays a huge, role in the pre-pandemic and of course post-pandemic, and how's that going to work? So having the ability to spin up resources quickly, a public cloud or even a private cloud environment, or even infrastructure as a service, all those things, I don't think it necessarily changed. I think what has happened now is we have to realize how to use these more efficiently, all these tools that we had, and that's just across the board. I think we're all going to be faced with those challenges on how to get a product out to market much faster and use the tools that we have and make our employees and ultimately our clients lives much easier.
Yeah, and Josh, Andrew was touching on cloud. I mean, certainly there's a lot of different technologies that Greenhouse offers, consulting, expertise, etc. Speak a little bit about, what Greenhouse is doing, with regards to the technology needs that your clients are having in enabling a dynamic workforce.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, obviously we have a public cloud platform, that we have around the country that kind of speaks to what Andrew was mentioning, being able to allow customers to spin up resources on demand, not having to go through that lengthy procurement process. We also see a large shift into a SaaS model for things. Andrew also brought up collaboration. That's been huge lately now, right? We find that users more than ever are working asynchronously right now. So you don't always have people working the same hours because they're not in the same time zones. Maybe they have different, different shifts like that, but it's not always as realistic to get users all in the same meeting either. So we need tooling, collaborative tools that allow these users to work on documents. One user might, start working on a spreadsheet at 7 a.m. in Sri Lanka, and another person picks it up at 4 p.m. on the East Coast. So they need to be able to collaborate on those documents. Maybe we see a lot of people recording, instead of trying to get 20 people on a meeting, instead they're recording themselves doing a training or doing a presentation, and then allowing users to go and consume that in their own time. So what we have been offering a lot to customers lately is SaaS-based collaboration, like the Office 365, for example. Teams has been a big runaway hit. We're using Zoom right now. So those have been really popular for us right now. The other thing that I wanted to touch on real quick is mobile device management. Andrew mentioned VDI, and users are connecting for their home laptop or their iPad or something like that. Being able to allow business to have control over those devices per whatever that BYOD policy might be, that's been really big for us lately.
That's great. And Patrick, do you have anything else to add on that point as well?
Yeah, I just want to touch on the reference to teams. There's an important part of this that I think goes beyond technology, which is how we continue to build the relationships that we've historically done through taking an employee or a peer to lunch, by going and grabbing a drink or grabbing a coffee before work, not having the opportunity to do that as freely. Even if we were to completely get past this pandemic with a vaccine, we've adapted to a world where we're interacting with folks and collaborating with folks across larger geographies and in different time zones. One of the folks on my team actually came to me. Our first day working from our homes was on a Wednesday. On Friday, had someone come to me and say, I think we need to get just our small little leadership team together every morning and spend 15 minutes just catching up, not talking about work. And I'll be honest with you, I thought it was nuts at first. Let's all get on Teams every single day. What are we going to talk about? Well, we're about 100 days running. We have yet to run out of things to talk about. And I frankly feel closer with my team than I ever did in years working with them in person. It forces you to get to know folks a little bit better. And I think I have not had a one-on-one call with an employee in developing them as a leader using this since all of this started. Everything has been over video, whereas it used to be a phone call if they were remote. So I think, whether it's Teams, WebEx, Zoom, the way that we think about developing the leaders in our organizations has totally changed.
Yeah, it's so amazing to see that something like this was needed, if you will, to see such drastic change, not only in just corporate culture alone, but just the technologies and the way we interact, right? It's wild. Talking about, from a managed service perspective, so, MSPs, if you were to ask 100 IT folks what an MSP does, you'd probably get 101 different definitions. It's different for everybody. And that's fine, right? That's part of, what we do in having those conversations. But, talking about kind of the support that you bring, talking about, the 24/7 follow the sun, kind of thing. Someone was talking about the depth. You don't necessarily need a CISSP or a CCIE, 50, 60 hours a week, but you might need them for, 10 or 20 hours a week, or, maybe 10 or 20 hours a quarter, who knows? But Josh, if you want to talk about that, we'll start with you first. I mean, what does a company look for in a managed service provider? What are some of the first questions maybe a client should be asking? We always lead candidly with Net Promoter Score. We also like to have reference calls for our clients. But what do you see out there from a Greenhouse perspective?
Obviously, one of the reasons that business would look for to a managed service provider would be to help outsource and augment their current IT staff. But a big part of what we are trying to provide to our customers right now is, again, that digital transformation journey, figuring out where they are right now and figuring out how to take them to the next step. what we're seeing a lot with COVID and this dynamic workforce is customers are coming to us with problems and challenges, and they're looking for us to help them find a solution. So it's not just necessarily outsourcing, but they want that guidance. Lately a lot of that's been implementing collaborative solutions. Like I said, Teams and the whole Office 365, a collaborative effort. It can be identity management. Now that users are working all over the world and they want to be able to control that identity, control the security of those endpoints. And I think what customers should be really looking for is partners that have a variety of tools and a variety of expertise at their disposal, that we're not just coming to the table with one solution and, all you have is a hammer, all the world's a nail. No, we want to find the best solution that's going to fit those unique needs. And another thing that's really important is having a MSP that's going to be there for you 24/7. Traditionally, IT service desks might have been available 9 to 5 to fit the schedule of most of your workers, but now that we have, again, people in different time zones, or what we saw with COVID is a lot of people were working at home, while they were also teaching their children. They were helping them with homework. They were doing these things, and they were working non-standard hours. So making sure that you have someone that's going to be able to help support your end users at 6 in the morning when someone wakes up early to get a jump start on the day, or is stuck working late in the day, you want to make sure that you're going to have someone there to support you.
And Patrick, do you have any examples of what you're seeing from a support MSP standpoint? Maybe share a little bit about that with OnePath.
Yeah, I mean, I think the support component of it has become almost a commodity. Those are table stakes, ticket to enter, if you will, having that 24/7 ability to support, and not necessarily through someone getting a call on a pager and having that one engineer call back, but truly having that robust organization. I will say that what's interesting is how important so many clients always felt that including that unlimited on-site support in their agreement was, making sure that when they outsource to a partner, that ability to come on-site to an office was a critical determining factor. And now as we go through this transition, the on-site support is, can I save money? Can I remove that? Can I just pay you if you need to come out? It's forcing, I think, a lot of MSPs to get a little bit creative with how we can, number one, leverage our vendor partners. What solutions are there out in the marketplace to help us automate some of what we do remotely, drive the end user experience to be so positive through remote support that you don't need it. It takes cost out of the system and makes it more efficient for everyone.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the difference in the last 4 months, right? From clients wanting on-site support to clients not even thinking, about that. So it's very interesting how things change. In terms of managing an entire company's infrastructure from setup and config to deployment of apps, how much of it should be in-house versus outsourced, and why? So a lot of stuff to kind of chew on there, but Betsy, we'll start with you on that one. What are your thoughts on that point?
Yeah, I hate to say it depends, right? But this is truly where it depends. What is right for your business? What is a core, critical application that your business needs to have control over versus, having someone else who can do it better, faster, even in a lot of cases from a lot of MSPs, with better SLAs than you might be able to get internally. And where can you look for a strategic expertise, like Patrick, touched on earlier, that maybe is a niche need, or it's not an every single day need of your company, whether that's from a technology or infrastructure or talent perspective. So I think it's really drilling down on the business, what your competitive advantages are, what the technology needs are of the business, and defining what is absolutely critical for you to own. And then where can you bring in dynamic workforce, talent to do it better than you can do it, internally, and gain a competitive advantage that way.
And Josh, what are your thoughts on that, of what should be in-house, what should be outsourced? What have you seen? What have you heard?
Yeah, as Betsy mentioned, it's a really big question, and there's never an easy answer. But generally what we like to ask customers is, how much can you take on yourself? everyone has different IT departments with different capabilities, but where are the current bottlenecks in your current operations? What are the pain points? Do you have long procurement times when it comes to buying hardware? When someone requests an application, does that ticket sit in a queue for 5 hours, 5 days, or 2 weeks? So where are those bottlenecks? And then the other thing is, do you have the expertise on hand? Obviously IT is ever changing, rapidly evolving. It's really hard for a company, especially ones with smaller teams, to stay up, on the front end of all those changes. And do they feel comfortable going at that alone and training their employees, or even hiring for that? Or is it something that they want to pull in a partner for?
And Andrew, what else do you have to add on that point?
Yeah, I think, Betsy, you had a good statement there where depending on your SLA, and I definitely agree there. I think that's a major driver as to, if you have an application that is, that has a requirement to be up for 24/7 and have support, then, you gotta weigh the options. And again, this is a big question. Josh, I do agree there, but you got to look at exactly what is it that you need to deliver as a product to your end users, right? And I think that will help drive which portions of your network you could outsource and which ones you have to insource. It's generally going to be that kind of balance, if you will. You could start looking at outsourcing a lot of your trivial type of stuff, like the WAN, for example, right? No need to pay somebody internally to open up a trouble ticket and sit on hold with AT&T or Verizon or et cetera, right? Outsource that. There's companies out there, including BCMOne, do a fantastic job with that type of stuff, keep you in the loop, monitor that 24/7, and then have your IT team focus in on more of the important things. How do I deliver, new features, new functions to your internal and external clients, and keep that in-house? Of course, as those products grow and you need more DevOps, maybe outsource portions of that to DevOps company. So I think it's never an easy answer, and it's flexible, and you have to having these relationships with these outsourced vendors and engineering resources is key, right? I think you can't lose sight of that. You need to have a bank of people that you could depend on should you need assistance with whatever you're dreaming up internally, and then bring that to market and develop it internally along with their help.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when we talk about outsourcing, a lot of things were just mentioned there, but let's kind of dissect this a little bit more individually, right? So let's talk about infrastructure just for a second. There's a lot of different needs that clients have where it makes a lot of sense to keep it in-house. I think we can all agree on that. There's also quite a few opportunities that I think are becoming more and more relevant as time goes on, that people realize that, rather than having my team of, let's say, 3 or 15 or 55 people managing this in-house, it makes perfect sense to partner with a vendor that's got 300 engineers that are experts in that particular area. What have you seen there? When does that start to make sense, from, again, DRaaS to production cloud to public hyperscaler management to virtual public, virtual private, dedicated private cloud type stuff? Andrew, we'll start with you on that, maybe 20, 30 seconds, and then we'll go ahead and move on to some of the other guys.
Sure. I think it's scale and cost. You got to look at, where you are when you first start out, and as you grow, that scale factor, if you're going to start loading up, a lot of infrastructure in AWS or Azure or whatever, that growth, and what you need to cover in terms of management, I think will ultimately drive that. And of course, that comes with cost. Having those people in-house is going to cost you probably much more than outsourcing that to an engineering firm that has that expertise and a large, deep bench to support you.
Betsy, you've seen this fairly recently, as a matter of fact. What thoughts do you have around, when it makes sense to outsource, just the infrastructure piece itself?
Yeah, and I think to tack on to what Andrew said, it is generally a speed, cost, better expertise, right? We're helping a customer right now, and we brought in some of the vendors on this call where they have an internal team that is spending a lot of time on just basic infrastructure, tasks and questions and tickets, and they're even using some resources they have that should be billable in the team to, be chief Googler in charge of fixing all of their technology problems. So this was an ideal situation for an MSP, because it's going to allow them to concentrate on their core business, and outsource that to better, faster, and for sure in this case cheaper than they could have done if they hired an in-house team or an engineer.
And Patrick, coming to you next on, just kind of talking about the outsourced of managed services, right? So again, drilling down into some different categories that were kind of generalized early on. When does it make sense to have an MSP be, kind of an outsourced help desk, or, an outsourced infrastructure team, or, maybe an outsourced, cloud management team, et cetera?
Sorry, that spacebar trick wasn't working. I find that a lot of that comes to, we talked a little bit earlier, and I'll use the word curation of some of the different tools that are out there in the marketplace. And it's frequently, a lot of companies aren't going to have the capability to go out and research 4 different multi-factor authentication providers and line them up next to each other and determine which makes the most sense for their business. Whereas if you look at the service catalog of a mature partner, they're going to have a couple to choose from based on the markets where they focus, and they bundle those in ways that make it easy for the end users and can reduce the cost for that organization through an outsourced partnership by bundling that together. When you combine those into a product offering where you're able to take advantage of that, there's opportunities to automate certain things. There's opportunities to invest and customize those solutions to increase the end user experience that no company is going to be able to do on their own. So Betsy, earlier when you talked about finding some of those unique skill sets, I think it's the skill sets combined with the investment in technology that you can get in scale, or at scale, to use your term earlier, Andrew, through a managed service provider by aggregating the needs of, in some cases, hundreds of different businesses. You can get a lot more purchasing power and, frankly, a lot more flexibility from some of these folks that are on the bleeding edge writing this software by aggregating that demand, and you can do things that can benefit those end users combined with the labor skill set.
Yeah, it's a great point. And Josh, I mean, maybe an example of what you've done or what you've seen where, again, a lot of this was maybe managed in-house, and it made more sense to have Greenhouse maybe do different, features or functionalities with regards to cloud or, public hyperscaler or, DRaaS or something like that.
Yeah, one of the things we're seeing with a lot of businesses is that, IT is no longer a singular cost center in the business. A lot of businesses don't even have a single IT department, because that's just so ingrained in the day-to-day life of, of the organization. So we ask customers, where are some of these compromises being made by hosting this cloud infrastructure in-house and by managing all these projects yourself? Where is the other side of that compromise from that effort you're investing in that? Does it come out in your end customer experience? Is it pursuing new projects and new businesses and things like that? Well, then it likely makes sense to offload that the ongoing support, life support of your cloud infrastructure to a provider to handle the back end deployment, the patching, the care and feeding basically your infrastructure, so you can focus on those projects that are more central to your business.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and drill down into a little bit of security. Andrew, we'll start with you on this, but what are some of the main risks that dynamic workforce, is susceptible to? I mean, what do we, a lot of people don't know what they don't know. Let's just be very factual in that regard with regards to security compliance. So, kind of rapid fire, what are some of the things that you've seen or heard, especially in the last few months, as we see more, dynamic workforce, people working remotely and things?
Yeah, it's definitely an area of concern. You're as an organization, your security footprint just got a lot wider. We need to be aware, right? People are using Wi-Fi networks in their houses, very unsecure. People are using their own devices. We need to drill down on that. How do we do, device management? Make sure that they're up to the latest code. So, any hole, right? It doesn't matter where you are. Any hole is open for a hacker to get in and take control of the network, BitLocker, etc. It is, it's scary, but also it is solvable, right? We could definitely solve for this, but it is something that needs to be considered going forward. And I know I've got to go quickly, but I'll leave it at that.
No, that's great. And Betsy, what else do you have to add in there? I know that you've seen and talked to multiple clients recently that talks about, the questions that they have in that regard.
For sure. And I would say this is probably the biggest area that Tier4 Group has been helping our customers since the pandemic hit. And even now, looking years ahead, we had a customer yesterday say they're going to not renew their lease. I mean, they're forever going to close their Atlanta office and everyone's going to work remotely. So it's really, we've been doing a lot of assessment work. Identity and access management, knowing who your users are, where they are, what they have access to, what they're doing. So we have a NIST-based approach of identify, protect, detect, and respond. And we can create that around workforce-related risks, and then start drilling down into things like training and endpoint protection. And I think Andrew had a beautiful statement earlier. You no longer are trying to worry about 10 locations. You're worried about thousands of locations and all the holes. And phishing and data breaches and cyber attacks are 100% on the rise in the last 3 months. So it's really helping organizations take a second look, stop and assess, and then give them a playbook moving forward that will look much different in the next few years or forever than it looked 3 months ago.
Yeah, that's great. We're getting close to getting the hook here from Joel. So I have a few more questions I want to get through. So I'm gonna pivot the conversation just a little bit. But when is the right time to, when we talk about talent, just overall talent, and we talk about, sometimes in security and compliance, it's difficult to go out and actually find the right talent to fill the roles that a lot of our clients have. Betsy, starting with you, what have you seen with regards to clients having open roles in security and compliance, maybe finding the right person, having a challenge keeping that person on staff long-term, or potentially not having maybe the luck that they had hoped for in finding that talent to fill that gap in the first place? Yeah.
We could do an entire webinar on this one topic, but and quickly, just this is where I feel like Tier4 having a holistic view across the talent landscape, but also the security landscape. For example, security engineers, there aren't enough of them. That's a fact. That's data. So keeping them in the roles, finding them, and then keeping up with the challenges of the expense, right, and how much they're costing and rising salaries. And most mid-market companies, you don't need a large security team. This is the perfect play for, for an MSSP or cybersecurity operations as a service, which we have at Tier4 Group, which wraps around the tooling, but also the consulting and the human element. So security for sure. If that's an area where you're struggling to keep someone in the seat or to hire or to keep up with the salaries, you can absolutely get more bang for your buck with a combination of tooling and an MSSP than you generally can. Generally, there's exceptions with a traditional full-time employee or employees sitting on your staff.
And Patrick, what have you seen in that regard with, again, clients that you've engaged with that might start with OnePath for, again, outsourced, data center services or something to that effect? Help desk, what have you, but then they come to you and say, hey, by the way, we're having a heck of a time retaining this talent or even finding the talent to begin with. Can you take this off of our plate and add this to our monthly bill?
It's absolutely increasing. I think Betsy, you mentioned security. I think honestly the same thing goes for data center. With all of the cloud migrations happening, a lot of the really talented folks are getting attracted to providers like those of us on this call. There's been so many HBR articles written over the years talking about insourcing what's core to your business and outsourcing the things you need to depend on to partners that understand your business. And in the very same sense, retaining someone that's a CISSP or security expert, keeping them interested to do the research, to learn what's on the bleeding edge and keep up to date is not part of your core business if you're not a cybersecurity provider. So you're not going to be able to retain that talent. Josh made a point earlier about keeping them up to date on new technologies. Any provider that's truly worth their salt has a program set up to where we're constantly training our folks, motivating them to train themselves, to learn, to train their peers, to bring that knowledge back into the workplace and share with their clients. That is the core business of a good provider. So it's that instance where, again, following the age-old advice of the Michael Porters of the world, outsource that to whom it's core.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. We are getting close. Oh, look at that. On cue, the guy jumps on to give me the hook. So towards the end of these webinars that we've done over the last few months, we like to hear about good news from our vendor partners that join us to talk about these subject matters. So what we would like to do is ask, we'll go round robin the entire group, but tell us about a recent or, in the last year maybe, recent client that you were able to go in and just do an amazing job for them and help them not only transform, but, maybe lower the stress, increase the RTO, RPO, do things that were just overall great for them. Andrew, we're going to go ahead and start with you. We'll do this about a minute or so each. Tell us a little bit about what BCMOne has done maybe in the last year or a couple months even for a big success story. Sure.
Won't go into names, but we did a large complete overhaul of a client's WAN infrastructure, took them out of an MPLS network, put them on an SD-WAN. But along with that, we did a on-prem lift and shift to Azure, and of course got all their O365 subscriptions. So basically, it was a complete overhaul of their entire physical infrastructure and also their server infrastructure up into Azure. Made it a complete solution, tying it together with SD-WAN, making Azure a part of their SD-WAN as well, so secure end-to-end. Even tied in remote access VPNs for their remote workforce. This was pre-COVID, so we were able to get to the sites. But everything's up and running, and honestly, it was a pretty easy transition to them when they did have to go into that virtual workforce. Everybody at home, yeah, they still have their physical infrastructure at all their office spaces, but we were able to incorporate their remote access VPN and create that secure infrastructure end to end. So that was a really nice win for us. Again, we did it from design, implementation to day 2 support.
That's great. Patrick, how about yourself? You got an example you'd like to share with the group?
I do. We were contacted by a firm in New England that does big data analytics for self-insured healthcare plans, primarily for large retailers, large businesses, and some of the HMOs. And they had spun out of a much larger consulting group, and obviously weren't able to bring a lot of their compliance and certifications with them. And through that process, we migrated them from somewhat of a startup company mentality with a SQL server under a desk, moved all of that into Azure, stood up their data loss prevention, stood them up, got them to be able to self-attest as HIPAA compliance, helped walk them through the SOC 2 process, all the technology that stands behind that, and got them to understand just how they could interact with us through a fractional CIO type model, where we sit basically at their boardroom table with their C-level execs, advising them on how they can use technology as a differentiator as they're selling into these large organizations, but without having to hire that CIO or that CISO onto their team. So being able to partner in a way where they're bringing a partner almost into the boardroom table, I think was a big mature step for them to take.
Yeah, that's a huge step when a client realizes that they can bring a partner, a trusted partner, into the boardroom table. That's a big deal. Josh, how about yourself? Give us an idea of a recent win or a client example of you guys coming in to save the day.
Yeah, so we were contacted by a data analytics company that's over in the Atlanta area, and they were basically unhappy with their current service provider right now. They weren't getting the response times that they want. They just didn't think that they were getting a good value. They had the cloud hosting, but not much of the support. So they came to us and we put together a custom-built cloud solution for them. We took over the day-to-day, infrastructure management of the patching and the monitoring and everything for them. But for us, a successful implementation is not just solving that immediate problem, but it's listening to the bigger story and the bigger pain points that the customer is experiencing. So we took time to learn their business objectives, and we talked about compliance and learned that PCI was actually a really big requirement for them. And while they had a bit of a grasp on it, it was a big pain point for them. So we then worked with them to really take their security to the next level. We put in a custom multi-factor authentication and single sign-on solution for them. We put in a security information event management, a SIM solution that kind of tied into all aspects of their infrastructure and gave them a nice single pane of glass over everything, as well as a synchronized security solution that extended from the perimeter of their infrastructure at the firewall to all of the endpoints throughout their network, both the local workstations on premises and the systems they're running in our cloud. So we really just tried to help them take that security solution to the next level.
That was great. That's a mutual client, and Greenhouse did a phenomenal job. So kudos to you and your entire team. Betsy, we saved the best for last. Give us an idea of when Tier 4 Group came in and saved the day recently, and we'll call it a day here.
Yeah, this is a fun little example of kind of the startup ecosystem, and it was a company that's been around for about 5 or so years with a great software product, and they really were hitting that cusp of starting to garner interest from very large financial services clients that they had been wanting to sell into since their inception. But with that comes those larger clients and customers looking at their security posture, and they essentially did not pass an internal audit to be able to put their product into that customer's ecosystem. And we're talking, the Charles Schwab's of the world and the very large companies. So we went in and helped them fix that. We helped them with all new policies and procedures, helped them shore up their security, and then engaged with them over the past year, plus in a CISO as a service fractional engagement. And we not only helped them tackle this particular large enterprise and get their product into the hands of that community, but helped them with 3. And it was really a position that they could not have undertaken had Tier 4 Group and our security team not gotten involved and enabled them to take their product. And we're excited to see where that's going to take their sales in the future. So a recent example of a fun win to help a smaller customer really carve out their future, essentially. So
yeah, that's a great example. And Joel, before I turn the time over to you, I'm going to share a quick one for Tier 4 Advisors. We had an insurance company come to us telling us that they needed help finding a new telephony vendor. They were on-prem, about a 10-year-old system. Long story short, we did that in a period of about 45 days. All while also through conversation, we understood that they also were looking for a different DR as a service vendor. They were going to put that off till next year because they didn't want to do both projects at the same time. We were able to share with them that we could do both of those in parallel with our team. And so they gave us both projects, and candidly, we did that project before even the telephony project was completed. So a little quick win example of what we've done here at Tier 4 in the last few months. With all that said, I want to thank all the panelists. I will turn it back over to Joel. Thank you to the attendees as well, and hopefully you join us on the next one that we do next week.
Excellent. Thanks, Jake, and to our panel. If any one of our attendees would like to learn more about how they could create a dynamic workforce for their organization, please reach out to a Tier 4 Advisors team member or visit tier4advisors.com, and we'd be happy to answer a couple questions that you have or facilitate a conversation with any of our panelists as well. Please join us next Wednesday, July 8th, as we take a deeper dive into the Tier 4 family of companies, so Tier 4 Advisors and Tier 4 Group, and how they are changing the game as it relates to IT sourcing, procurement, talent, professional services, and staffing. So it should be a really interesting conversation. We wish you all a safe and happy 4th of July weekend, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, everyone.